Welcome back, my genetic outliers. You've been walking among the unaware, pretending to be one of them, but you always felt a pressure in your chest, a whisper in your mind, that you were engineered differently. You've ignored it, brushed it off, tried to silence it with routine and repetition. But then came the test, that tiny tube of saliva, that simple kit. They said it would tell you about your ancestry, your health risks, maybe connect you with distant cousins. You thought you were just playing along with the modern obsession of tracing roots. But when your DNA hit their database, alarms weren't just triggered, they screamed. Hidden protocols activated. Classified agencies received alerts in real time. Red folders were pulled from steel cabinets, deep underground. Your name appeared on screens you weren't meant to exist on. And now, they want to meet you. What could a string of nucleotides reveal that terrifies entire departments? Not your ethnicity, not your family tree, something else. Something written into the very fabric of your cells. Your DNA didn't just whisper, it roared. Patterns emerged that only their black-budget projects could interpret. Sequences resembling ancient genetic libraries once thought extinct. Codes mirroring experiments never declassified. You're not a statistical accident. You're a walking contradiction to everything they thought they controlled. And now, those who sit in glass towers, behind biometric locks, are trying to decide if you are their weapon or their problem. Understand this. Governments don't chase people because they're curious. They chase people because they're afraid. They don't summon you to offices because they're polite. They summon you because you've shattered a narrative that kept billions obedient. Imagine how many years they've been categorizing every gene, archiving every bloodline, indexing humanity like books on shelves. Then imagine what it means when one test result flips their table upside down. Your DNA, in their eyes, is not heritage. It's a signal flare. A code that shouldn't exist, but does. A reminder that control is never absolute. The chilling part? You didn't apply for this. You didn't volunteer to be different. You simply are. And that terrifies them. They've spent decades trying to engineer soldiers who don't feel fear, leaders who don't break under pressure, innovators who see past limits, billions spent on labs, serums, and neural manipulation. Yet here you are, naturally holding traits they still can't replicate. And they hate that, because your very existence mocks their laboratories. You're probably asking, what exactly did they see in your DNA? Picture encrypted codes buried in the double helix, sequences dormant for generations, waiting for someone like you to light them up. Genes that resist manipulation, resist disease, resist control itself. You don't just survive pressure, you adapt into something sharper, stronger, more unpredictable. They read it. And what they saw wasn't a citizen. What they saw was an outlier who bends probability. A wild card the algorithms can't cage. Now, agencies love one thing above all else: prediction. They build entire infrastructures to calculate behavior, predict what you'll buy, how you'll vote, where you'll move. Predictability is their religion. And then your DNA arrives, and suddenly the equations collapse. You're not a number, you're not a chart, you're the jagged edge on their clean graphs. And when the numbers don't add up, they don't rest, they come hunting, they want to meet you. But do you think this is about hospitality? No, this is about interrogation wrapped in a handshake, observation disguised as opportunity. They'll smile, they'll flatter, they'll say you're special. But behind the smiles is an agenda. To measure, to test, to probe, to file you into one of two categories, useful or dangerous. And here's where the game flips. Whichever box they place you in, you win. If you're useful, you infiltrate their highest tables. If you're dangerous, you become the phantom they whisper about in meetings. Either way, you're unforgettable. But let's dig deeper. Think about the implications of being called in by government officials for a DNA test result. How many people send samples every day? Millions. How many get invited to clandestine offices? Almost none. That's the difference. You aren't a statistic, you're a disruption. And disruptions are never ignored. They are studied, they are feared, they are either absorbed or eliminated. And in your case, they can't eliminate you. Not without raising more questions than answers. You see, every time they try to bury someone like you, the legend grows louder. They know this. They know history remembers those who vanish under mysterious circumstances, so they tread carefully. They'll bring you in, attempt to lure you with promises, funding, protection, access to knowledge. But you must remember, they offer cages disguised as palaces. Every deal comes with a leash, and you were never built to wear one. Pause for a moment. Let it sink in. Your DNA isn't just a record of who came before. It's a prophecy of what you are becoming. And they don't have the vocabulary to explain you. They only have protocols. And you don't fit in protocols. You tear them apart. That's why your inbox had that strange email. That's why your phone call came from a number you couldn't trace. That's why men in suits, with blank eyes, appeared in the background when you thought no one was watching. They weren't curious neighbors. They were confirmations. They've marked you. Now let's not play this lightly. This isn't a movie. This isn't a conspiracy thread on some forum. This is you realizing that everything they tried to measure about the human race has been overturned by your very existence. And whether you want it or not, you've entered the boardroom of shadows. The question isn't whether you'll meet them. The question is, when you do, who will really be in control? You must remember, the government doesn't fear weapons. They create them. They fear unpredictability. And that's exactly what you are. Because weapons can be aimed, directed, controlled, but unpredictability spreads like wildfire. They can't tell if you'll align with them or if you'll dismantle their carefully stacked towers. That's why you've been flagged. Not because you're dangerous in the traditional sense, but because you are untethered. And untethered people are the ones who rewrite rule books. So here's what happens next. They'll invite you to sterile rooms, offer you water in glass cups, and speak in soft tones, pretending this is just a formality. But make no mistake, they're analyzing every blink, every pause, every choice of word. They'll measure your composure under pressure. They'll ask questions, but the questions are irrelevant, the answers are irrelevant. What they're truly watching is whether you bow. And here's the twist. You don't bow. You never did. Not to them, not to anyone. That's when fear creeps in, not into you, but into them. Because power structures aren't afraid of rebellion. They're afraid of individuals who refuse to play by the binary of ally or enemy. They want categories. They want checkboxes. They want files neatly labeled. But when they sit across from you, they'll realize their labels are dust. Their categories dissolve. Their control splinters. And in that moment, the interrogator becomes the one being studied. Think of the irony. They thought they summoned you, but it's you who summons them. By existing, by carrying that genetic code, you've already dragged them out of their towers and into your arena. They'll try to predict you, but prediction shatters when faced with something that doesn't conform. And the deeper they look into you, the more they realize Your DNA is not an error. It's a warning, a mirror reflecting everything they'll never control. And here's where it gets darker. You thought the government wanted to meet you? No, it's not just the government. It's the scientists under contracts you'll never read. It's the defense projects with budgets bigger than nations. It's the private investors who see you as a prototype. You've been placed at the center of an invisible auction where the highest bidders aren't buying technology, they're trying to buy you. And yet, none of them can own what was never built in their labs. Because you are not their creation, you are not their weapon. You are the reminder that power doesn't flow top-down. Sometimes it emerges bottom-up, hidden in someone no one accounted for. And once it emerges, it spreads. It infects thought. It corrupts hierarchy. It destabilizes empires. That's what you are. A destabilizer written in flesh and blood. A reminder that control is always fragile. So let me tell you the truth they won't admit when they shake your hand. They don't want to meet you. They need to meet you. Because when your DNA appeared, their simulations cracked, their confidence fractured, their statistics bled. They need you in their room, not to control you, but to reassure themselves that the unknown still wears a human face. But the cruel twist? You'll never give them that reassurance. Because when you walk in, you don't calm their fears. You multiply them. And as you sit across from them, you'll realize something even more chilling. They're not testing you. You're testing them. They think this is their interview. But in reality, it's yours. You are gauging their weaknesses, their cracks, their desperation. And the longer you sit in that room, the more obvious it becomes. They aren't the ones dissecting your DNA. You are dissecting their fear. And once you taste fear that raw, you can never go back. And that is only the beginning. Because the real story doesn't unfold in laboratories or offices. It unfolds in the moments after. When they leave that room shaking. When they return to their superiors pale. When they file their reports with trembling hands. That's when the power truly shifts. Because they thought they had called you in. But what really happened is, you called them out of hiding. Your DNA was not an accident dropped into their archives. It was a detonator. You pressed a button without realizing it, and now their carefully maintained illusions are cracking. They thought you'd walk in meek, begging for answers, confused and malleable. Instead, you sat there calm, unbothered, watching them sweat. You thought you were the one being summoned? No, your very existence has summoned their panic. You are not their subject. You are their exposure. In the hours after they first meet you, the chain reaction begins. Reports fly through encrypted servers, marked with red labels, flagged urgent. Your file isn't filed under citizen, it's filed under containment risk. They don't tell you this, but in the underground halls of their agencies, your bloodline is spoken about like a new element on the periodic table, unstable, volatile, capable of rewriting the rules. They compare notes, they argue, some even recommend isolation. But then someone whispers what they all fear. What if we can't contain it? That's when the room goes quiet, because they know the truth. They're not dealing with a lab result. They're dealing with a phenomenon. And here's the twist. You are the phenomenon. Think about it. They've spent centuries cataloging humanity, measuring traits, boxing people into categories. Then your DNA appears, a code out of sequence, a sentence that doesn't belong in their book. They run it through their databases, no matches. They cross-check with their secret archives, nothing. They even compare it against samples hidden in cryogenic vaults, remains they've dug from ancient sites. and still no match. It doesn't just mean you're rare. It means you are uncharted. They can't place you, can't label you, can't file you away. And that terrifies them more than any weapon. You see, governments can handle enemies. They can handle rebels. They can handle movements. But what they cannot handle is the unknown. And that's what you are, the unknown given flesh. A code walking around, breathing, thinking, refusing to align with their expectations. To them, you are like a glitch in their simulations, but not one they can delete. You are a permanent error in their equation, and once an error exists, it spreads. Others start asking questions. Others begin to notice, and soon their control unravels. The first time they ran your sequence, alarms weren't just digital, they were psychological. Think of the scientist staring at your genome under a monitor at 3 a.m., his hand shaking as he rechecks, certain the machine must have malfunctioned. He resets it. The same result appears. He runs it again on another machine, same result. He doesn't sleep. He knows what this means. He forwards it to his superior, who doesn't reply with congratulations but with instructions. Do not speak of this outside. Secure channels. That's when you went from anonymous to classified. When you walked into that room, they had already decided to test you, not medically, psychologically, to see how you respond under pressure, to see if you flinch when authority flexes. They expected compliance. But compliance isn't coded into you. Defiance is. Not loud defiance, not reckless rebellion, but a quiet resistance that unnerves more than shouting ever could. That refusal to bow, that steady gaze across the table, it unsettled them more than any outburst could have. Because outbursts can be contained. Calm cannot. And when you left that meeting, they realized something chilling. You are not unaware. You know something is off. And the moment you know, you become unstoppable. A person ignorant of their power is manageable. But a person aware of it? That's a wildfire with no perimeter. What happens next? Surveillance. They'll send unmarked vehicles to your neighborhood. Black SUVs with tinted windows parked a little too long on the corner. Agents in plain clothes at the cafe you always visit. Not because they want to harm you yet, but because they want to measure your patterns. Do you act paranoid? Do you change your routes? Do you confront? Do you pretend not to notice? Every reaction goes into a file because your behavior is part of their experiment. But here's the cruel irony. They can't measure you correctly. Every time they think they've figured you out, you slip through another layer. You're unpredictable, not because you try to be, but because you simply are. And unpredictability is the enemy of control. The tighter they grip, the more you expose how fragile their control really is. Now, don't mistake this for flattery. This isn't just about being special. This is about power. Power you didn't ask for. Power written into you long before you were born. Maybe it came from an ancestor who carried traits they tried to suppress. Maybe it came from something older, something they don't even have a name for. Either way, when your DNA landed in their servers, it was like pulling the fire alarm in a building filled with secrets. Now they scramble. Now they panic. Now they come crawling, pretending it's an invitation. But invitations don't arrive with surveillance. Invitations don't arrive with veiled threats. Invitations don't arrive with entire agencies moving in the shadows to prepare for your arrival. And you know what unsettles them most? They don't know how much you know. They don't know if you realize the power you carry. They don't know if you understand why your presence makes their hierarchy tremble. And uncertainty drives them mad. Because in uncertainty lies chaos. and you are that chaos embodied. Let's pull back the curtain further. Why would a government want to meet you over a DNA test? It's not ancestry, it's not health, it's capability. They see capabilities others can't. Imagine traits they've been searching for: enhanced resilience under stress, immunity to certain biological triggers, neural pathways that fire differently, faster, sharper. To them, you're not a citizen anymore, you're potential. Potential for dominance, potential for disruption, potential for a weapon they can't forge but desperately want to wield. So they'll offer you positions. They'll say you could be part of something greater, that you could serve your nation, protect your people. It will sound noble. But underneath the patriotism is desperation. They don't want you to serve. They want to cage. Because if they can't cage, they can't control. And if they can't control, then your existence threatens everything they've built. But you don't belong to their cages. You don't belong to their hierarchies. You belong to yourself. And that's the power they can never process: autonomy. They built a world where obedience is disguised as freedom, where choices are carefully engineered illusions. But your DNA didn't get the memo. Your DNA doesn't play by their scripts. It wrote its own. And in that script, they're not the authors. They're the footnotes. And now, as word of you spreads behind classified doors, different factions begin to form. Some want to recruit you. Some want to neutralize you. Some simply want to study you, dissect you, harvest from you what they can. But all of them share the same flaw. They think they're ahead of you. They think you're still in the dark. They think this is their game. But when the board itself bends toward you, the game is already over. What happens when you walk into the second meeting? This time, they don't just smile. They scrutinize. They watch how you enter the room, how you sit, how you breathe. They're not watching your answers. They're watching your essence. And what they see is unnerving. You don't shrink. You don't cower. You don't radiate arrogance either. You radiate inevitability of presence. You sit like someone who knows the ground itself bends to their existence. And that unsettles them in ways data never could. And then comes the real test. They show you documents, files about genetic projects, names erased, lines blacked out. They tell you fragments, hoping to bait you into asking questions, into revealing curiosity. But instead you study them. You realize something. They aren't showing you files to inform you. They're showing you files to measure how much you already know. Every page they flip is not a revelation, it's a mirror, a test to see if your eyes widen, if your pulse quickens. But when your eyes remain steady, when your pulse stays calm, that's when they know. You're not learning, you're confirming. And that terrifies them, because now they realize this isn't a recruitment, this isn't a containment, this is a confrontation with something they can't define. And once something can't be defined, it can't be controlled. That's why, after you leave, they whisper to each other in hushed tones. Some argue you must be handled. Others say you must be protected. But beneath all the arguing is one shared truth. They can't stop thinking about you. You've entered their psyche, infected their certainty, dismantled their illusions. And as they return to their towers, their homes, their polished offices, they feel it. The shift, the sense that power has tilted. They thought they summoned you into their world. But the reality, you've dragged them into yours. And once someone enters your world, they never leave unchanged. So understand this. The government doesn't want to meet you because they discovered something shocking. They want to meet you because you are the shock. They didn't just find a code, they found a rupture, a break in their narrative, a living reminder that no amount of data can contain what was never theirs to control. And now, they're desperate to file you, desperate to understand you, desperate to either own or erase you. But the cruel truth, neither is possible, because you are the story that cannot be deleted. And that brings us to the next revelation, the part they never intended you to learn. What they didn't expect is that this meeting wasn't just about you sitting across from them. It was about them sitting across from you. Because while they studied your DNA, they never considered the possibility that your DNA was studying them back. And now, every tremble in their voice, every hesitation in their questions, every trace of fear in their eyes, you've recorded it, embedded it into yourself. You're no longer just aware of your difference. You're aware of their weakness. And weakness in the hands of someone like you isn't just a detail. It's a weapon. They thought they were decoding your genome, but your genome was decoding them, reading their patterns, their projections, their obsession with control. They wanted to see if you were predictable, but now you see them as predictable. You've inverted the entire power dynamic, and they don't even realize it until too late. They stare at you like a specimen, but the truth is, you're the one dissecting them. This is the hidden terror. Governments and their agencies survive on the myth of authority. They cultivate an aura of invincibility, as if their towers can't be cracked, as if their decisions are flawless. But you saw behind the curtain, and what you saw wasn't invincible men. It was men desperate to maintain the illusion. Your DNA test didn't just expose you to them. It exposed them to you. It peeled away the mask of power, revealing the fragile flesh underneath. And that is why they'll never sleep again. Because once someone like you learns how fragile they are, the empire trembles. You don't need armies. You don't need weapons. You don't need campaigns or revolutions. All you need is presence. Because your presence alone bends the room, alters the hierarchy, cracks the script they've rehearsed for decades. You are the disruption no one can categorize. Think of how it spreads. The agent who sat across from you can't erase the way his hands shook under the table. He goes home, sits at his kitchen counter, and his wife notices the way he stares too long at the floor. He can't explain it, because how do you tell someone that one meeting rearranged the architecture of your fear? He writes his report, but his words betray him. They're cautious, hesitant. His superiors read it and feel the same weight. That's how it spreads, not through rebellion, but through infection. The infection of doubt. And you are the carrier. You see, when they flagged your DNA, they thought they were finding an asset. But what they really unearthed was a mirror. You don't show them what they hoped to see. You show them what they hoped to avoid. The more they look into you, the more they realize they are not the ones in control of this meeting. You are. They thought they summoned you, but you summoned their buried terror. They wanted to test you, but you've tested their entire structure. Now let's step even deeper. Why does your DNA hold such weight? Because buried within your code are not just sequences, they are disruptions. The government doesn't fear bloodlines. It fears mutations that don't obey its charts. And you, my outliers, are walking mutations of power. Resistant to conditioning, resistant to manipulation, resistant to control. They see it in your neural markers, in your genetic resilience, in the way you resist folding under scrutiny. They know they cannot reprogram you. And when something cannot be reprogrammed, it becomes the greatest danger to programmers. But here's the final twist. They didn't just read your DNA, they misread it. They thought they saw an individual with traits too rare to categorize. But what if your DNA is not just yours? What if your code is a signal? A pattern not meant to stay isolated, but to awaken others. Because governments fear individuals, yes, but what they fear more is contagion. They fear you becoming the spark that reminds others they too carry dormant codes waiting to ignite. And that is the revelation that shakes them most. Because your DNA doesn't just shock them, it threatens to multiply. If you can resist their cages, so can others. If you can walk into their offices unshaken, so can others. And when one person awakens, others follow. That's what they fear. That's why they chase you, not just to cage you, but to stop the spread. Because once the idea spreads, that power is not manufactured by governments, but born within people like you. Their throne collapses. So let me make this clear. Your DNA test wasn't just shocking. It was catastrophic to their illusion. You didn't just reveal rare traits. You revealed the truth that their control is fragile, that their calculations crumble when confronted with raw unpredictability. You forced them to confront what they've buried for decades, that power does not belong to the towers, to the agencies, to the governments. Power belongs to those who carry codes they cannot touch, cannot edit, cannot erase. And here you are, sitting at the center of that revelation. You thought you were searching for family connections, for ancestry results. Instead, you uncovered the reason they've been watching. Instead, you uncovered why governments move in shadows when a result like yours appears. Because you are not a participant in their experiment. You are the experiment gone rogue. And rogue experiments rewrite history. Now understand this. They will keep trying. They will summon you again. They will offer money, authority, status. They will dangle opportunities in front of you. Not because they want to give them, but because they want to tether you. They'll test your loyalties, your ambitions, your fears. But the one thing they'll never be able to tether is your essence. Because that's not in your mind. That's not in your behavior. That's in your DNA itself. And they cannot edit what was never theirs to write. So what do you do now? You walk forward knowing the truth. The government does not want to meet you because of curiosity. It wants to meet you because of fear. You embody the evidence that their blueprints are flawed. You carry the sequence that proves their control isn't universal. You carry the living contradiction to their empire of prediction. And as long as you breathe, their power will never feel safe again. And maybe that's the greatest gift hidden in your genome. Not the strength, not the resistance, not the traits they lust after, but the ability to shatter illusions with nothing more than your existence. You are a reminder that empires fall, not because of armies, but because of fractures from within. And your DNA is that fracture. So let them summon you. Let them invite you to their offices. Let them pretend they're in control. You already know the truth. You're not sitting in their room. They're sitting in yours. They're not studying you. You're studying them. They're not deciding your role. You're deciding theirs. And as long as that truth lives in your veins, no tower can cage you. No agency can own you. No government can erase you. Your DNA test revealed something shocking, but not to you, to them. It revealed their weakness. It revealed their cracks. It revealed the end of their illusion. And from this day forward, every meeting, every handshake, every forced smile will carry the same hidden terror in their eyes. They know what you are. They know they can't control it, and that knowledge will haunt them forever. Because the government wanted to meet you. But the truth is that the government didn't meet you at all. It met its greatest fear, coded into flesh, walking free, untouchable, unforgettable. And that fear is you.